Okay. You guys ready?
What are we looking at? The two cameras? Or are we looking at you?
Right between.
I'd say, yeah, right between me and then probably them.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not looking into the cameras, no.
Okay. Ready? Okay. Thank you for everybody joining us today. Our law firm is actively investigating allegations of abuse and systematic neglect involving former residents of Vista Maria, with a lawsuit to follow shortly. Vista Maria, a facility in Dearborn Heights entrusted with protecting and rehabilitating vulnerable young women, ended last year with more than $60 million in net assets. Yet, behind their facade of compassion and financial strength, unspeakable harm was occurring right under our noses. What we've uncovered is deeply troubling. It reveals a culture where power was abused, dignity was stripped away, and the very people sworn to protect inflicted harm and trauma on these young women. This wasn't care, it was control. It wasn't shelter, it was imprisonment. To many survivors of Vista Maria, it felt like they were living through the real-life Hunger Games, where manipulation, punishment, and fear were the tools of control. Guards played favorites. They pitted girls against one another and engaged in what can only be described as grooming behavior, slowly breaking down trust and normalizing sexual and psychological exploitation. Vista Maria refers to these young women as residents. But as a resident, you can get in your car, you can go for lunch, you can have autonomy, right? These girls were not residents. They were child vulnerable prisoners. We've heard accounts of clothing being forcibly cut off with scissors by male guards, girls being ordered to sleep completely undressed under surveillance cameras and being told it was for their protection. These guards were not acting alone. They were following training, directives, and a system that normalized humiliation and subjugation. When I was a young public defender, I defended, young people who could not afford an attorney. And some of my clients would have to be taken to Vista Maria for rehabilitation. I assumed when I was a young lawyer that this was a humane organization that was there to help people, right? But I was completely wrong. I want to be clear. This is not a situation of a few bad actors, right? This was a systematic system that was set up by the powers that be at Vista Maria, and it was allowed to continue for way too long. It was pervasive, and it was an institutional failure. But here's the problem. When I was looking into this case, and I was hearing the accounts from these girls myself, I assumed that when I looked at the financials of Vista Maria, that this would be an organization that was financially distressed. But these are public documents. Anybody can go on Google and find them. This was not only a situation where Vista Maria was financially distressed. They were rich. They had a lot of money. They had over $60 million of net assets as of the end of last year. So I asked myself, why would an institution that's a nonprofit have such a surplus, have so many investments with a small facility, yet have such a low standard of care that people were traumatized for their entire lives? And that's what we're investigating right now, and I think that will be the focus of our lawsuit. There's no plausible way that the board of directors didn't know. The number of documented incidents, reports, and calls, including those to Dearborn Heights police, make it impossible to claim ignorance. They were definitely warned, they chose silence. There were over 500 calls for service at the Dearborn Heights police this year alone. Again, this is not an organization that was lacking for funds. Anyone who looks at this type of a system would assume there were bad people at the top, but they were also broke. That wasn't the case. Vista Maria had massive, dozens of millions of dollars of financial surplus, and this happened anyway. After nearly 20 years in this profession, I thought I'd heard it all. One account by one of the girls, I had to stop the interview like 3 minutes in. And I had to ask the young lady, I need you to continue with one of the paralegals in my office who's a female. I can't hear it anymore. This is uncomfortable. She showed mercy on me and stopped telling me what happened to her. This is exactly what we're hearing from these girls. Again, an institution that was severely cash flow positive would allow this to happen. These girls were vulnerable, they were prisoners, they were in the care of Vista Maria, and now they have to deal with this for the rest of their lives. That's it. Questions?
What do you ultimately hope to gain by filing this today? Is it victim or justice for those who have been victimized by Vista Maria? Are we seeking to gain back some of those assets? What is the goal by filing this suit here today?
Accountability and justice for the young ladies. We're not filing the lawsuit today. We want to make sure there's just so many victims. We haven't had a chance to speak to all of them, and they're speaking to people at my office. They've spoken to me. They've spoken to my co-counsel on the case. But we got to get a handle. If we knew that we had a handle on the number of victims we had, we would be filing the lawsuit within 30 days. The only reason we're not going to file the lawsuit is because we just haven't spoken to every single person. We've spoken to a lot, but I know that there's a ton more waiting in the wings. That's the only reason we're not ready to file a suit. But that is what we hope to gain, which is accountability and justice for them.
Twofold. When are you planning to file, and when do you expect to file, and what types of clients do you have? Are they employees? Are they former residents, current residents?
We've spoken to a former employee. We are not going to be representing, as of now, former employees or current employees. We will only be representing victims, former residents, prisoners. There's one that is not a prisoner there anymore, but she's still a minor. But we will be representing people who suffered abuse.
Okay, and then again, when do you plan to file?
Within 30 to 60 days after we feel that we have a handle on the number of victims there were. Not a week that goes by that we don't have a lot more that come in and do the interview process. But we want to be fair to them and make sure that we don't go too soon. We could have filed it 30 days ago, right? With what we've heard, we have enough to file a lawsuit for a bunch. We're only waiting to see when the deluge of new people stops. So within 30 to 60 days after that.
If I may ask another question, Vista Maria recently announced it's closing its residential treatment
Yeah,
program.
glad you brought that.
In December.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, so I guess when you talk about accountability, this program will allegedly cease to exist next month.
Yeah.
You talk about accountability. I mean, are you asking for like a CEO turnover? Are you asking for new guidelines from the state on how to deal with children tasked to their care?
So in terms of guidelines from the state, we obviously, as private actors, we cannot effectuate a decision by the state. Maybe they'll make a decision based on our suit, but I want them to read what our lawsuit's going to have. Our lawsuit is going to have the results of an investigation. They're going to have allegations. They're going to have affidavits by former residents. Whatever they do in their wisdom, that's up to them. That's something that was very important to us, that they shuttered the program after it being a cash cow. So it was a cash cow, but they shut it. Anybody with any kind of common sense knows that if a company or a nonprofit shuts down something that got them to the point of having over $60 million in net assets, there's something off. There's something off to shut that down, right? It clearly was not successful for somebody. It was successful financially, but it was not successful for somebody. And who was it? It wasn't the board of directors. It wasn't anybody else. It was the victims.
So if I may cut in though, I actually spoke with the CEO of Vista Maria last week, and she claimed that the reason why they're shutting the program down is because the needs of the girls entering their care is too great from relative to what they can provide, as in girls that may need more, a higher acuity of care, they can't handle that. That's a part of the reason why they're having increased police phone calls. I was wondering if you could address that at all.
Yeah. I have a thought on that. So when we were looking into this case and we saw their assets, one of the things that we said to each other, and I should have said earlier, is with that amount of net assets, they're going to spend a ton of money on the highest priced PR firm, hired guns you can find. They'll find them the best ones in New York, the best ones in the country, and they will come up with the most amazing narrative, the most sympathetic narrative on why they're making the move. But that's not going to fool us. They will, none of us here have $66 million to hire a PR firm. Otherwise, they'd be doing this press conference, or they would have trained me to do this press conference, and they would have done something. I would be making you guys cry right now if I had $66 million to throw at a PR firm. But I don't have that. None of these girls have that, right? So they're going to have a PR firm, but we're not going to believe the PR drivel that comes out of their mouth. Facts are facts, right? There's just no way that an organization making that kind of money with over 500 calls for service from the police department, just all of a sudden they're shifting their focus to other forms of caring for girls. So that's my response to that.
And just jumping off of that, I think Kathy Regan also said that some of the money is allocated for certain things. Like there is certain money that goes towards the buildings, but there's also money that is specifically allocated for their new pool. What's your response to that?
A new pool doesn't cost $66 million.
Do any of the girls want to say anything? Chief, do you want to say anything?
No, other than, we're happy that this has finally come to a point where we can actually say we don't have to answer no more police runs over there. It's really just was brought to light sometime in May, thanks to you and members of the media. 500 calls for services is insane. The police should never ever respond to a home or a business in the city of Dearborn Heights 500 times in 1 year. And we're grateful. We're happy. It's a big day for our police department. It's a big day for our city. And we're happy for all the victims too. Hopefully we can learn from this, and whatever it is they do with that building, CEO change, whatever it is, it could be something where the police will not have to respond on a daily basis.
It is sad. I mean, there's not a lot of facilities around like this.
Yeah.
Were you hoping they could have made the changes that they said they were
Yeah,
going to make?
we haven't really thought about it. We're just happy that, we will not be up there on a daily basis. It takes a lot from our city. Our city is a small city. We're short-staffed, so we don't have a lot of police officers out here. We're building a police department, and officers spending 2-3 hours at Vista Maria, it takes away from the other residents who really need our assistance. And it's just a good day for us.
Yeah.
Officer, if I may ask a follow-up on that question. I know the reason, and it's not just relative to Vista Maria, but other residential youth treatment facilities like this, they blame state regulations concerning seclusion and restraint, saying that the state has hand-tied them from being able to handle things, which is why they need to involve the police. I guess similar question to what I asked a moment ago. Could I have just kind of your take on that kind of thought process out of Vista Maria?
I mean, most of the police runs that we answered up there where the residents were fighting with the staff. A lot of police runs required petitions where we would have to wait for the staff to meet us at the hospital to fill out a petition. We had an incident where an officer picked up one of the ladies at the facility, took her to Garden City Hospital, and the staff took 2.5-3 hours to show up to fill out the petition. Well, the whole entire time, the officer's standing by with the young woman at the hospital waiting for the staff to show up. So you're talking about a 4-hour delay, and the officer's not able to respond to police runs that are needed in the city. Stolen cars, domestic violence, it was too much for us.
Can I add to that? I'm glad I didn't know that until he just said it. So this was real talk, and what they said was PR drivel, right? There's PR drivel. The chief of police does not have $66 million for a PR firm. He's just giving you real talk because he's on the ground, right? But whatever that statement was, that was written by a very high-powered PR firm, right? We don't believe it's not real talk. So.
Did any of the girls want to add anything to?
Anybody over here? Any of the parents? No?
Is there anything you want to say, just in addition to some of the stories that you've heard? We did see some violations. Do any of their stories add up and correspond to some of the violations that you read?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know what stories you're talking about.
I know. I guess a lot of the girls said that they weren't believed. They felt like they weren't believed.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. All of them said that to us. Yeah. Yeah. But here's the thing. So these girls, most of them don't know one another. Their stay there spanned over decades, right? But they've told us the same stories. They've even some girls have referenced the same exact guards, and they had no idea. They don't know one another. Right? We know them, but they don't all know one another. And this is not all the victims that were there. A lot of them have jobs, they have families. There's a lot more than what's here, but they've all said the same stories.
Sorry, I was just thinking in my mind, like One thing that the CEO had also said was there are a lot of employees and staff there who've been there a long time and obviously do care, and they have given a safe space for a lot of the women there.
Yeah, we've spoken to one former guard who also cared, and she was fired for caring, and that might be part of what, what comes out in the lawsuit. Are there employees currently at Vista Maria that are good people? I'm sure there is. I'm sure. I mean, it's not possible for it not to be the case. The question then comes down to leadership and accountability and the system that they were working in, right? Maybe there were people who went against the grain. One former employee that we spoke to went against the grain, was protecting the girls, and was terminated. So like we have to combine the two. It just comes down to, if you have over $60 million in assets and you claim to be understaffed, why? How could you be understaffed? You're a nonprofit. It's not like you have to distribute this money to shareholders. So if it's a matter of just doubling the number of guards, well then double the number of guards. You're paying them basically low money anyway, right? Increase the pay for the ones that are there, hire more. You're a nonprofit. You don't need to be investing in a mutual fund. You need to be investing in the care of these kids. And they were given the power of the state to imprison people, right? They were given that power. Well, that comes with a responsibility. If you are babysitting your neighbor, if your neighbor brings their children to your house, and you're babysitting their children and your children, you have a height, the hairs on the back of your neck should raise, because now you are in the care of someone else's kid, even for an hour, right? But if you're in the business of caring for prisoners in a long-term basis, if that's your job, right, the hairs on the back of your neck should be raised 24 hours a day. And if you have over 500 calls to police, dude, double the number of staff. Do something about it. Don't do what you ended up doing. And that's the problem. It's not one individual person, it's a system.
Do you anticipate possibly representing former employees?
That's a great question. True answer is I don't know. I don't know right now. We have spoken to a former employee. I don't know if we're going to actually represent them. It depends on whether or not they have a claim, because the claim is abuse and torture and stuff like that. That's the claim. And that is really, we've only found that in residence right now.
I think a lot of ones that we've spoken with have talked about, they feel like they weren't trained properly, so they felt like they couldn't handle.
They might have a claim against Vista Maria, yeah. Whether or not we represent them, that's a tough one. I don't know.
So right now, girls, and how many do you have right now?
Over a dozen. As of last count last week, 13 to 15 that have been interviewed. Not that have reached out, that have been interviewed.
So would it be more fair to characterize this as you are going to file a lawsuit, but right now you are still actively seeking testimonials from women and girls who were at Vista Maria?
Yeah, because all of them were there at completely different times, and they suffered. There's like a buffet of abuse that we've seen, and each one of them has unfortunately drawn the short straw on this part of the buffet, that part of the buffet, and so we're categorizing them right now. But a lot more than 13 to 15 have reached out. We've just concluded interviews of 13 to 15.
And if I may, one more question. When you were speaking to these 13 to 15 individuals, you mentioned that they don't know each other. Did a lot of their stories align? I know you mentioned like guards, similar, but similar actions.
Yes, 100%.
What's the most common allegation you're getting from the girls?
Hunger Games style, being forced to fight with one another for the amusement of guards. Being forced to fight, go unconscious, choke each other out, also being hit by guards, being accosted by guards, some of them sexually assaulted by guards. Some of the girls were invited to run away and live with the guard, stuff like that. This is horrific stuff. Like I said, I had to stop one of the interviews, and I asked Tammy Johnson in my office to do it, to conclude it, because I couldn't. It was just became uncomfortable talking to that one young victim, hearing her account. She was 20, 21 or something like that. She couldn't hear it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You guys asked great questions. Thank you so much. Thank you. Your cameras were off. You forgot to turn them on. Okay, go ahead.